Buffalo Bill Cody's final chapter began on a cold January day in 1917. The legendary showman, who had entertained millions with his Wild West shows, succumbed to kidney failure while visiting his sister in Denver. His last wish was to be buried atop Colorado's Lookout Mountain, but Mother Nature had other plans. With snow blocking access to his chosen resting place, his body had to be preserved for 6 months, requiring multiple embalming procedures. A controversy erupted between Colorado and Wyoming, with some arguing he should be buried in the town of Cody, which he helped establish. Though he ultimately found his rest on Lookout Mountain, whispers persist that his remains were secretly relocated to Wyoming under cover of darkness. Jesse James, perhaps the most infamous outlaw of the Old West, met a sudden and tragic end. After a tumultuous period filled with daring heists and narrow escapes, he was hiding out with his brother Frank, until Frank eventually chose to leave the life of crime, leaving Jesse vulnerable and forced to recruit new accomplices. Among these new members were the Ford brothers, Bob and Charlie, who had their own ambitions. Exasperated by Jesse's relentless criminal exploits, Missouri's Governor Thomas Crittenden had offered a $10,000 bounty for his capture. Lured by the prospect of money and a possible pardon, the Ford brothers hatched a treacherous plan. On a sweltering day, while Jesse relaxed at home without his coat and guns, Bob Ford seized the moment of vulnerability and shot him in the back of the head without hesitation. This cold-blooded act not only secured the reward for the Ford brothers, but also marked a turning point in the relentless hunt for outlaws. Jesse James's death quickly captivated the nation, and rather than hide their involvement, the Ford brothers openly claimed responsibility, Robert Ford even sending a telegram to the governor to collect the bounty, as throngs of curious onlookers gathered at his modest home in St. Joseph for one final glimpse of the fallen outlaw. Bill Hickok, whose name became synonymous with Old West legend, first garnered fame when a magazine recounted his killing of 3 men, establishing him as a feared sharpshooter. Over time, he engaged in numerous gunfights until a tragic accident in which he inadvertently killed his own deputy prompted him to retreat from such confrontations. As his star gradually faded and hardship set in, fate caught up with him. On a gloomy day in Deadwood, South Dakota, while playing cards in a saloon, his luck finally ran out. With his back turned to the door, he failed to notice young gunslinger Jack McCall, a young gunslinger, approach. A shot to the back of the head ended Wild Bill's life. In his hands, he held a combination of cards that would become infamous, a pair of aces and eights that would forever become known as the Dead Man's Hand. Billy the Kid, the notorious young outlaw whose life was as brief as it was violent, ultimately met his end at the hands of Sheriff Pat Garrett. By the time he was 18, Billy was already implicated in approximately 17 homicides and was perpetually evading the law. His relentless cat-and-mouse chase with Garrett was filled with twists and close calls. Although Garrett initially captured him in a dramatic turn in 1881, Billy spectacularly escaped, killing 2 guards in his breakout. However, his freedom was short-lived. After 3 months on the run, Garrett received a tip about Billy's whereabouts. With meticulous strategy, Garrett raided the outlaw's shadowy hideout at Maxwell Ranch in New Mexico. Lurking in the darkness, he waited for Billy to appear, and when the young outlaw did, he was caught completely off guard by a fatal shot. As with many legends of the Old West, Billy the Kid's demise continues to spark debate and conspiracy theories, ensuring his legacy endures in American lore. Davy Crockett, often called King of the Wild Frontier, remains one of America's most iconic figures, though the circumstances of his death are still shrouded in mystery and debate. A pioneer, congressman, and gifted storyteller, Crockett is best remembered for his heroic stand at the Alamo in 1836, where he fought alongside roughly 200 men against an overwhelming Mexican force during a grueling 13-day siege. The details of his demise on the fateful morning of March 6th continue to divide opinion. The prevailing account is that he fell in battle, demonstrating unmatched courage. Yet, alternative reports suggest that Crockett, along with 5 other soldiers, was captured after being promised clemency and then executed in betrayal of that promise. These conflicting narratives only serve to deepen the controversy surrounding his final moments. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, immortalized on film by Paul Newman and Robert Redford, lived lives as dramatic as the legends they became. As leaders of the notorious Wild Bunch, Cassidy orchestrated heists that netted around $35,000 each, always managing to slip away thanks to his meticulous planning. Eventually, weary of fugitive life, the pair decided to start anew in South America. They kept a low profile until a supposed payroll robbery in Bolivia attracted the attention of local polices. In the ensuing confrontation, Sundance was wounded, and later that night 2 gunshots shattered the quiet. The bodies of both men were discovered with fatal headshots. Sundance with a shot directly between the eyes, and Cassidy seemingly having inflicted a self-inflicted wound to the temple. The mysterious circumstances of their deaths have fueled decades of debate and conspiracy theories, with some suggesting that one or both may have survived. One such claim came from William Henry Long, who allegedly lived under Sundance's alias in Utah until his death in 1936. However, DNA testing conducted on his exhumed remains in 2008 by anthropologist John McCullough failed to match any known relative of the Sundance Kid, leaving the mystery unsolved. Belle Starr, known more for her connections to criminals, led a life marked by controversy and tragedy. Convicted once for horse theft, a charge that earned her a 9-month prison sentence, Belle managed to avoid further run-ins with the law, though she continued to associate with infamous outlaws, including 2 husbands who met their ends in shootouts and maintained ties with the notorious James Younger gang. Her life was brutally cut short on February 3, 1889, just 2 days before her 41st birthday. After visiting a neighbor, she was ambushed on her way home, knocked off her horse, and shot multiple times to ensure her death was struck in the back, neck, shoulder, and face. The identity of her killer remains a mystery, with various theories circulating, including one implicating her own son, Ed. Her tragic end remains one of the enduring unsolved enigmas of the Wild West. Henry Plummer remains a controversial and enigmatic figure of the Old West, with varying accounts of his life and actions. Depending on the source, he is either remembered as a law-abiding sheriff who met an unjust end, or as a corrupt official who abused his power and committed numerous crimes. The historical record on Plummer is sparse and often conflicting. It is known that he was involved in several deadly encounters, though there are arguments that these incidents may have occurred in self-defense. His tenure as sheriff was notably brief. He was elected to the position just a year before his death in 1864. Plummer's downfall came when a vigilante mob convinced of his criminal activities and abuses of power took matters into their own hands. The crowd forced him to the gallows where he ended his life. The love story of Annie Oakley and Frank Butler reads like a romance novel with a bittersweet ending. Their journey began with the crack of rifle fire at a shooting competition, where teenage Annie's perfect score of 25 hits bested Frank's 24. Through nearly 5 decades, they shared the spotlight in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, the thunder of their shots and the crowd's applause becoming the soundtrack of their lives. But in 1926, Annie's health began to fail, her once steady hands weakened by pernicious anemia. She passed away in Greenville, Ohio, surrounded by the trophies and memories of her extraordinary life. Frank, who had been her partner in both love and showmanship, couldn't bear life without her. Just 18 days later, his heart simply stopped beating. They rest together now in the Oakley family cemetery, their headstones as perfectly aligned as their famous shooting act once was. John Henry "Doc" Holliday began his career as a dentist in Texas. But his passion for card games quickly diverted him into the unpredictable circles of the Wild West. His love for gambling led him to cross paths with legends such as Wyatt Earp, drawing him into deadly shootouts and a lifestyle increasingly dominated by alcohol and wagers. These vices only hastened the deterioration of his health, worsening an already devastating battle with tuberculosis. Seeking relief, Doc Holliday retreated to a sanatorium in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, where in 1887, at just 36 years old, he succumbed to his illness, leaving behind a legacy defined as much by his high-stakes card games as by the gunfights in which he participated. Wyatt Earp, though only modestly known during his 19th century lifetime, eventually became a legendary figure after his death, thanks largely to biographies that immortalized his daring exploits, including the famous shootout at the OK Corral. In his later years, Earp moved to Los Angeles, where he immersed himself in the burgeoning film industry as an unpaid consultant on westerns. He forged friendships with movie icons like Tom Mix and William Hart, both of whom served as pallbearers at his funeral when he died in 1929. During the service, Tom Mix's tears spoke volumes, capturing the deep respect and personal connection between Hollywood's brightest stars and this titan of the Old West. Bat Masterson was a man of action, a skilled gunslinger and respected sheriff, his career bolstered in part by his close association with Wyatt Earp. This friendship played a key role in drawing him into the chaotic law enforcement of Dodge City, Kansas, a town already patrolled by his lawman relatives. His tenure as sheriff blended moments of triumph with deep sorrow, none more painful than witnessing his brother Ed's murder while on duty before he reached 49. Weary of the endless perils and disorder of the frontier, Masterson longed for peace. Consequently, he and his wife moved to New York in search of a quieter life. There, he traded his revolver for a pen, emerging as a respected newspaper journalist and even serving as a U.S. Marshal. Yet his final chapter was written abruptly on October 25, 1921. While finishing his last column for a morning paper, Masterson died of a heart attack at 67. Calamity Jane, one of the most enduring legends of the Old West, led a life as turbulent as her notorious nickname suggests. Renowned for her daring skills and fierce bravery, Jane often disguised herself as a man to work for the Pony Express and, according to rumor, even resorted to prostitution in order to survive. Her remarkable talent as a horseback shooter quickly made her one of the marquee attractions in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, further bolstering her fame. Yet with stardom came excess. Jane's fondness for alcohol eventually spiraled into a crippling dependency that haunted her until she died at 51. In a twist of dark irony, she was buried at Mount Moriah Cemetery in South Dakota, right next to Bill Hickok, a decision made by 4 men at her funeral as a final prank on Hickok, despite his lifelong indifference toward her. If you enjoyed the content of this video, don't forget to like and share, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment below so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.